Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, it's a bold prediction show, and thankfully for me, we've been doing these long enough that I can feel your nonsense radiating through the computer right now. So I just want to get you on record right up front before we even dive in, Tony. When we're taking account of, hey, this would be bold for this team. This is based on the current thing. Are we taking into account the fact that Indiana has one of the best defenses in the country, or are we acting like Indiana hasn't played anyone, so therefore it doesn't matter at all, and just what Ohio State has done in the past matters? I want to get you on the record before we dive in here and you start trying to play both sides.
Yeah, well, boy, the projection going on right now is immense. I'm like being blasted by like gamma rays here. I'm going to turn into the Hulk from your projection radiation. Wow, that was a lot. Tom, as you know, what applies to thee does not always apply to me on this show. And I would expect that will continue in this one. Before we do get to this show, we can just say, Tom, you won last week because you got one bold prediction correct, which was the most obvious bold prediction in the history of sports, which was that Carnell Tate would score a touchdown. One of the interesting aspects of it was that it had to be an 8-yard touchdown or more. And his second touchdown was 8 yards. If that had been his only touchdown, I would have been a little bit more furious. But I knew that he was going to score. You knew that he was going to score. Everybody knew that he was going to score. And he did. And so there you go. The closest I came to anything was holding Northwestern to 3.4 yards per player under. They were at 3.8. So there you go. Congrats, Tom, on winning the most obvious bold prediction show ever. Although I will say, any of us could have gotten more than one, but we didn't. So outside of the freebies, so I guess we were relatively bold last week.
Well, I had Ohio State holding Northwestern under 47 yards rushing, and they held Northwestern to 50 yards rushing. So I'm thinking I feel pretty good about that one. Like I was on the right track there. I had read the room correctly and just missed it by that much. I was expecting a little bit of a thank you because I gave you the one about the Harry Carey impression, and then I did the Harry Carey impression. The first thing when we got there, I, like the Ohio State Buckeyes, a little bit of a slow starter, gave Tony a 1-0 lead in bold predictions, but much like the Ohio State Buckeyes, roared back for a dominating win to continue my excellent season. So, Tony, I'll tell you what, I'm going to defer my choice to later on in the show. So why don't you, by all means, you may receive the opening kickoff here.
All right. I appreciate that. And my first bold prediction is something that hasn't happened in, let me look real quickly and tell you, it's only happened twice this year, for one. Has not happened since September 21st for the Buckeyes, and that is Ohio State will have a 100-yard rusher in this game. Quinshon Judkins has 2 100-yard games this year. Travion Henderson has 0. We know they're splitting all of these carries, so it's very difficult for one guy to get it done, and generally you have to get it done in about 11 or 12 carries. I am boldly, for just 1 point, saying Ohio State will have a 100-yard rusher in this game.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because I have a somewhat related one, because I think what makes that bold is the fact that Indiana has been so good against the run all season long. In fact, their season high for rushing yardage allowed by any opponent this season is 137 yards. So, Tony, and there's only one, that team was the only one to go over 116 yards, only 3 teams all season to go over 100 yards. So, yes, I think yours is absolutely bold. 2 thumbs up, Tony. My first one is going to be that Ohio State exceeds the record high amount of rushing yards by an Indiana opponent this season by 20 yards or more. So 157 or more yards rushing for the Buckeyes.
I think it's incredibly bold that you are predicting Ohio State to rush for 20 more yards than Charlotte did. Wow. But I will say it is more yards than anybody else. 157 yards rushing is not a ton. It's about 15 to 20 under what they've done the last few weeks. But when you look at what the other teams, and again, Indiana's played nobody. We know that. So I'm going to give Tom a little leeway. I'm gonna allow this, but you're on a short leash, mister. as they say in the courtroom dramas. So 157 yards rushing for the Buckeyes.
I should have earlier gotten you to also acknowledge that Ohio State is, in fact, once again reshuffling its offensive line, and that Indiana is leading the Big Ten in sacks. All of that will come off of the sack total, will come off of the rushing yards. So it's not just they need to run for 57 more yards than your guy. It's they need to run for 57 more yards, but also not give up a bunch of sacks to the team that has the most sacks in the Big Ten with a offensive line version 4.0. So I think we just need, I know we've agreed on this being a thing. I just want to make sure we're providing some context for the viewers and listeners, because I don't want them to be misled by your nonsense.
Tom, you can provide all the context you want. That's going to be cut out, and it's not going to make the director's cut either. We're just going to go from prediction to prediction, and that's how it's going to be. So 157 yard. And so, Tom, good prediction. 157 yards for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I can concur with that one. My hope is that it's like 42-0 after 3 quarters, and Ohio State has rushed for like 170 yards. Then the fourth quarter is just like 13 kneel downs, like right at one and right after the other, and you end up at about 156 yards. So hope.
Well, Tony, I'll tell you what, I will amend my bold prediction to also add that the last guy to run for more than 130 yards, in fact, the only guy to have his team run for 120 yards, got fired mid-season. That would be Biff Poggi, for the Charlotte coach who got fired this week. I will amend that he, in addition to running for 157 yards, also Ryan Day will not be fired in season. Now, when we parlay those two things, does that make it a 2-point bold prediction? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you.
Not this week.
Okay.
Not this week. Okay, so good job. My next bold prediction, my next one-pointer is something that, happened 2 weeks ago. So
when you put it like that, I'm bracing like what was it, the Magnavox commercial for the, where the sound is like blowing out of the TV and like blowing the guy's chair across the room. That's me bracing for the boldness that's about to come out of your mouth. By all means, go ahead.
G. Scott scores a touchdown, and his snaps are going to be a little affected this week by the return of Will Kazmarek, the improved play of Bennett Christian, Jelani Thurman. So I think his snaps are going to be down, but I'm going to go with G. Scott here with the touchdown. He scored once against Purdue. He also scored once against Michigan State. So he's scored 2 touchdowns this year. I don't think it's out of bounds to call this a bold prediction when, frankly, any touchdown prediction for a tight end should just also be like an interception prediction on defense. It's just allowed until it's like caged over or something like that.
So you were getting into thou dost protest too much there, because I, unlike others, am able to contextualize things. This is probably all going to get once again cut out, but that's okay. This is a good thing for you. So now you don't have to cut it out like you did the other thing, which you didn't do either, because I know how this works. Anyway, I'm able to acknowledge that I think Will Kazmarek's return means that Will Kazmarek will likely be taking a bunch of snaps. And while they may be in a bunch of 12 personnel, something like that over the course of the game, just to sort of help the offensive line, that's, it's probably going to take some snaps and potentially some targets away from G. Scott, although it's probably taking more away from Bennett Christian and Jelani Thurman, the guys a little further down the depth chart. But I think this is a good one. I will allow it. I did briefly consider a Will Kazmarek receiving something or other, didn't end up going with it. But if you fight me too hard later, maybe that will be a replacement one. So, all right. So that's good. Tony, Indiana has only been held under 122 yards rushing once all season long. So that just feels like context we need to provide here. Ohio State holds Indiana under 47 yards rushing, because that's something that they have only done to an opponent once in the last 12 months. The low for the Ohio State defense this year against a Power 5 team is 47 versus Michigan State. Ohio State holds Indiana under 47 yards rushing. I am running it back from last week, even though Indiana is a substantially better rushing attack than Northwestern was.
Well, we saw Michigan last week hold Indiana to 40 yards rushing, which was remarkably lower than anything they had done before. I'm going to go ahead and allow this. It worked for me last week. I'm not going to keep riding this under 47 yards just like you are, and we'll see who gets there first.
47 is the new 220, 220.
So maybe next week. I don't know that under 47 will work next week, honestly, based on Michigan's offense. We'll talk about it then. But
I'm already so pre-irritated for next week's show because Michigan's offense is so. We may just have to do it solely based on the Ohio State offense next week because if we do it on the Michigan offense, we're going to end up with Donovan Edwards finishes with -20 rushing yards. Nope, -22 rushing yards. Nope, -24, and it's just going to be even more annoying than the show already is.
We can do that part as like a DLC. That's like the downloadable content that is, you add on to the actual show. So Indiana under 47 yards rushing, I will go with that one. Now, Tom, Indiana this season has only allowed 4 touchdowns in a game once this year, and it was the Maryland game. And I'm not sure if all of those touchdowns were actually from the Maryland offense. They've only allowed 3 touchdowns twice, and one of those was the Northwestern. And again, I don't know that all of those were offensive touchdowns. My bold prediction here for you, Tom, today is that Ohio State quarterback Will Howard will account for 4 touchdowns in this game, something that no other quarterback has done in the history of time since, I'm not even going to go into it, but when time was invented.
All right, so I'm going to pull up the Maryland-Indiana box score,
and
we're going to see how Maryland accounted for those 28 points. 3 touchdowns for quarterback Billy Edwards Jr. and 1 rushing touchdown for Roman Hemby. So it was 4 offensive touchdowns. And so the problem you have here is that I think 5 touchdowns for Ohio State is an extremely reasonable prediction. I have not put together my prediction yet, but I think that 35 points for Ohio State is an extremely reasonable number. And if they score 5 touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown for Will Howard, it seems like an extremely reasonable expectation. So I don't know if this is bold. It's not unbold, but this is one that may require a little bit of finagling to increase the boldness slightly, where the first touchdown, perhaps between the 17 and 34-yard line, does not count. Thoughts?
Thoughts. I hate it. That's my thought.
Good. Absolutely. Well, it sounds like we're on the right track.
Here's the thing. Remember when all of the context that I have to now put back into the show, frankly, of you talking about how Indiana not having allowed anything like this, and that's the more important aspect of this.
Okay, yes. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna cut you off right there.
Mm-hmm.
Which quarter has Ohio State been the very best in this?
Third quarter.
Fourth quarter. So how about just the first one between 17 and 34 in the third quarter doesn't count?
I don't hear.
I can't be the first. I'll tell you what. Go ahead.
No, I will say I get the 17 and the 34. So it's between the 18 and the 34,
non-inclusive.
Right.
Okay.
So I don't like this at all, but I like the show. That's not true. I don't.
I mean, I feel like taking one quarter, and if you'd prefer, we can make it the second and the fourth if you'd prefer to keep the third. I'm not taking the first because we know they're a slow starting team, so I feel like the first quarter doesn't do me a whole lot of good. Now that I've said that, will he throw for a touchdown of 18 to 33 yards in the first quarter? Absolutely. And when it happens, you're welcome.
Well, and here's the thing. We're going to go ahead and go with the first touchdown in the third quarter. Between the 17 and 34 doesn't count because it's entertainment. And we're here to entertain. So, okay, so your next one.
All right. So Indiana has only allowed 1 pass play of 40 yards or more all season. Now, I'm going to give you a choice, Tony. That pass play was 47 yards by Northwestern. So I will either have my prediction be Ohio State hits one pass play of 47 yards or more to match or exceed the long pass play allowed by Indiana all season, or Ohio State hits at least one of 40 plus another of 30 plus. So you can either have a 40 plus yard play and a 30 plus yard play, or a 47 plus yard play.
No, I feel like we're going to have to go with what they haven't done yet. So, because I believe that is what bold entails sometimes. So Ohio State has a pass play of at least 48 yards. Is that what we're doing?
Okay, that's fine. Longer than 47. That's fine.
Okay.
Yes, 48 yards or more.
I mean, they should. They do. Do you know how many Ohio State has this year that are of, say, 50 yards? Because I could tell you here in one moment. And I've already agreed to this one, so don't worry. But in terms of a 50-yard pass plays for Ohio State this year, they've had 7. So they have 1 per game, basically.
Well,
now,
except not 1 per game because they've played 10 games.
We're rounding up.
And also, literally never in the history of college football, going back to Moses, Tony. Moses.
Oh, Moses.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
when you put it that way.
Yeah.
So pass play of at least 48 yards for Indiana. Ohio State. Okay. All right. Here's something, Tom, that I could not even begin to tell you the last time it happened. I think we will agree it has not happened this year, which means it probably hasn't happened ever. This should be more than a 1-pointer, other than the fact that it almost happened last week. So, with that in mind, Ohio State linebacker Sonny Styles, 5 impact plays this week. He had 4 last week with 2 tackles for loss, then 2 pass breakups. I'm saying 5 impact plays, which would include tackles for loss, pass breakups, interceptions, forced fumbles, fumble recovery, that sort of thing. So, Tom, and what do you think? 5 impact plays. I don't know how you can say no, but here we go.
It has not happened this year. You're telling me that it has not happened this year. I've not gone through his game log to double check you on that. But
yeah, I don't know how it could, because he's not had many tackles for loss. I can talk you through this real quick. Sonny Styles, 5.5 tackles for loss this season. In terms of like pass breakups, his season high was 2 last week. That was also his tackles for loss season high. He's had 3 pass breakups this season, no forced fumbles, no kicks blocked. I don't know that he's really had any fumble recoveries. So yeah, this would be, I'd say by far his season high, except he had 4 last week. So it's clearly his season high.
Yeah. So he's had, it looks like, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, 4 pass breakups, and 11 tackles for loss. So
whoa, that's not Sonny Styles.
Oh, no. Sorry. That's career total. Sorry. I'm sorry. I pulled up the game log on Sports Reference, and at the bottom, it gives you the total for his career, not for the season. So yes, you're right. Yes. No, I think that's good. I think that's,
okay.
Obviously, as you said, already did it last week, and I'm sure the viewers can appreciate the context that and the grace and the leeway that I'm showing you here. But yes, I will benevolently, Tony, allow this. You're welcome. Strong agree. I can see the gratitude in your face right now.
That's not gratitude, dude.
No, said not. Have I misread the situation? That's on me. I apologize. When we've worked together longer, I'll probably be able to read your emotions better. Anyway, Tony, did you know, we've talked about it earlier, so obviously you don't know, Indiana, number 1 in the Big Ten in sacks per game. Tony, did you know they're averaging more than 3 sacks per game? Did you know that? 31 sacks in 10 games, more than 3 sacks per game. That's a 5K, 3.1 sacks per game. That's very impressive, Tony. That's why it's going to be even more impressive when the rebuilt Ohio State offensive line allows 1 or even 0 sacks this weekend against Indiana, averaging at least 3, and this offensive line playing together for the first time all season.
That's amazing, because you know what happened last week against Michigan's rebuilt offensive line for Indiana? 0 sacks.
Did it really?
Yeah. So, surprised you there, didn't I?
You did, yes.
Who would have thought? And right away you're like, well, shoot. They had 7 the week before against Michigan State. So some of these numbers are a little skewed. In Big Ten play so far, they're averaging three sacks per game in Big Ten play. So it's roughly the same. But 0 sacks last week against Michigan. And again, 0 sacks against Charlotte. These Charlotte boys, I'm telling you, I don't know why they're firing their head coach, because these guys are firing on all cylinders.
They apparently want a guy who wears sleeves. I don't know. It's you know how those Charlotte, a lot of bankers down there, very fancy pantsy, and just not the sleeveless look. All right,
So,
we'll circle back to something there. How about this one, Tony? Something that has not happened since September, and Tony, only twice in the entire history of college football. Going back to Adam and Eve, Tony, that far back, Jeremiah Smith scores 2 touchdowns on Saturday. Has not happened since September. The last time he did was against Michigan State.
I mean, this feels like an inevitability, but we can't say it's not bold. He's scored, just 2 in the last 4 games? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
He's gone like every other. So he is due. I also have one with him later on, but we can talk about that later. Jeremiah Smith, 2 touchdowns, just rushing or receiving, or?
Yes, 2 touchdowns scored.
Okay.
Because he's only done that twice. Once was 2 touchdowns receiving against, I think, Western Michigan, and then 1 receiving and 1 rushing against Michigan State.
I've already gotten in with something that has happened twice with the 100-yard rusher, so I can't quibble with this one because I've boxed myself in. So, Jeremiah Smith, 2 touchdowns. We will allow it. The people want it. We will go with it. Tom, you know how Bart Simpson, good old Rock, trusty Rock, never lets him down. I think for about the 3rd week in a row, Tom, I'm going with the Caleb Downs interception. I'm feeling real good about it right now. Feeling really, really good about it. I think I know he's due. It's been, I don't even know the last time he had an interception. I know it was last year. Maybe we're coming up on an anniversary of some sort as I look really quickly for that information. So let me see. Last year, I believe he had 2 interceptions last year, and they happened September 30th and October 7th. So he has not had an interception since October 7th of 2023. This boy is so due for an interception. This should honestly be like a 3-pointer by this point. If you've gotten the bold prediction, the same bold prediction wrong each time for 3 weeks, shouldn't this carry over like cell phone minutes, Tom? Shouldn't each, I've got that bold prediction from last week. I'm going to carry it over to this one. It carries over this week. So this should be a 3-pointer, but I'll give it to you for 1.
So it's funny because when we didn't do the one on the sacks, I thought, well, I'm just going to have to pick someone have an interception in this game. And I thought, well, Caleb Downs feels extremely due. So because I graciously allowed you to go before me, you have taken that one before me, and I'm not willing to one-up you to take Caleb Downs with 2 interceptions. So I will allow yours, and I will take Lathan Ransom gets an interception, and we will just have to watch and figure out which Ohio State safety gets the interception that we have so boldly predicted.
Jordan Hancock.
Oh, 100%. It's going to be Jalen McClain. What? How does that even happen? Yeah. It's going to happen
out there.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to object to that one. So, Tom, my first 2-pointer, we're moving right along. We're not going to bog down at all here.
He said jinxingly, 23 minutes into the show. Go on. Yes.
So, as you know from studying and looking at the numbers, Indiana, the most yards rushing they have given up this season is 137 against the mighty Charlottes. And the most yards passing they have given up is 289 against Maryland. So, I'm not going 220. I am going with 138-290. Ohio State rushes for more yards than Indiana has given up this season and throws for more yards than Indiana has given up this season. Not since the rib was plucked from Adam and put in the ground and water poured over it and sun came down and grew a lady, has this year's Indiana team given up either 138 yards rushing or 290 yards passing. And I am saying the Buckeyes are going to do both of those things. 138, 290. And I'm even, while I'm talking and not letting you speak, Tom, I'm going to look to see how many times the Buckeyes have actually done that this year for your benefit. so that when you come back and say, blah, 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 I can say, do you know how many times they've done it this year? And I can say, 1, 2, 3. So
3. Wow, they've done it 3 times and you only want 2 points for it? Wow, Tony. Can
however,
I tell you something? I tell you something? I was about to say, yeah, I this is one that I absolutely hate. But now that you provided that helpful additional context and the fact, Tony, that they did it.
They've done it
What was the
against
passing? They did it against
290.
Purdue. 290. Oh, 290. Okay. So they did it against Western Michigan and they did it against
Michigan State,
and they did it against Oregon. Boy, those are 3 people who've never been in my kitchen. Well, that's quite a group of teams there.
I will remind you, Tom, this is a rebuilt offensive line for the third time.
Since when? I haven't. First time hearing of it. Yeah, and the fact that you're picking them to do both and combining them together, I feel like, boy, if you just increase both numbers by 5, I'd be absolutely completely helpless to stop you.
How do you feel about stopping me with 138, 290, though?
Less helpless, less hopeless, to be honest.
I mean,
it feels like what? How about 143? How about 143, 290? How about that?
Well, let me see here. 143, 290. Yeah, I will do that so that we can, I mean, it's just 5 yards. But, Tom, I'm going to say this. If they have 143 and kneel downs at the end do not count. 143 sans, we will remove any fourth quarter kneel downs. We'll take this. I'll let you have the second quarter kneel downs. But we will strike, the jury will not be allowed to hear the fourth quarter kneel downs.
Well, I don't like it, but it does make it more unnecessarily complicated. So it feels like now I'm powerless to stop you. So yes, in that case, yes, we have made it doubly more complicated. So yes, I will allow.
Perfect.
Tony, I'm going to keep things a little more simple. That's a lie. This is actually somewhat complicated. And it's actually somewhat complicated because I'm trying to make it more favorable to you. Will Howard sets season highs for rushes, so 13 plus rushes, and also rushing yardage, 29 plus yards rushing. However, Tony, the first sack does not count as a rush, but the sack yardage does count against Will Howard.
Okay. Not counting the first sack, but counting the yards.
As a rush, but counting the sack yardage.
So he needs at least 14.
No, he needs 13. His high is 12 rushes and 28 yards, so he needs 13 plus rushes and 29 plus yards.
All right, 13. That is a lot. We know he's going to be rushing more. Honestly, the 13 feels like the bigger issue.
Yes,
than the
because
29.
Because he's probably not going to have that many design runs, especially given the number of plays that they're typically running. And while you could pick some up on sacks, that then is working against you on the yardage.
I'll be honest, I don't like this one, which means it's pretty good. Just looking at his rush, 12 carries against Penn State. That's kind of what I'm expecting. And really, this is really right in line with, he was 12 of 24 against Penn State. You're obviously calling for more than that. 10 for 28 against Iowa. The 9 for 13 against Oregon is maybe the most, like, this will be I don't know if this is the best defense they'll face. Probably not. But there are a lot of sacks, as we know. So you've got a lot going for you in this, and that it seems pretty reachable, but then you do have some things going against you. That's a long way for me to say, gosh, darn it. So yes, we will allow that one.
The very best kind, the extremely reluctant, but ultimately destined to be accepted. Yes. Extremely annoyed. You just had one of those as well, so I don't want you to feel like I'm taking, getting the best of you here. You just had one as well where I was deeply annoyed. So yeah, I think that's I think I knew it would require a little more nuance and a little bit more complication and to get it really properly dialed in. But I thought we had found the sweet spot. Glad you
Yep.
agreed.
Yep. Okay. All right. So my 3-pointer, Tom, and remember how for 1 point, you went with Jeremiah Smith reaching a season high in touchdowns. I'm doing something similar with my 3-pointer. Jeremiah Smith reaches or exceeds his career highs in catches, which is 9, yards, which is 119, and touchdowns, which is 2. All in the same game, all new or ties his season career highs. And again, if one is good for 1 point and we're parlaying 3, I mean, this is actually a 5-pointer that I'm only asking for 3.
I'm going to need him to
How?
exceed in 1. Meet or exceed is fine.
Okay.
But I'm going to need him to exceed in either catches or touchdowns. Either one is fine.
No. No, Tom, because again, you are the king of parlays, and we know each step of that parlay, 3 1-pointers parlayed together does not equal a 3. And if we agree that each of these numbers is good for 1 point, how could the 3 of them not be good for 3, Tom? Answer me that. Other than the fact that it's me doing it.
Yeah, well, got to tell you, that does play a factor here. Yeah, unquestionably, that plays a factor here.
Now, if you want me to go to 120,
I would like to complicate this slightly more. How about must exceed in one of the categories?
Okay.
Which, I'm asking you to get 1 more yard.
Yeah, that is one I will go with. But so help me, if it's 9 for 119 and 2, that is one where I will get into the scorers. Like Jerry, you did not have this. They did not measure this. This was a 4-yard catch, not a 3-yard catch. If you look right here, I'll show it to you on my tablet, and we'll have that kind of switch. So I'll get it. Don't worry, I'll get it. All right, Tom. What is your terrible 3-pointer?
All right. So my 3-pointer, which is great, by the way, I was so glad to hear you talk about Caleb Downs having an interception earlier, because I thought, what Caleb Downs hasn't done all season, and really, I don't think, has he ever done it in his entire career? Tony, it appears that he has not done it in his entire career, Tony, and that is score a touchdown. Now, he did have a punt return touchdown, one punt return touchdown, but that was against Chattanooga last year, and that doesn't even count because that's, it's against footwear, Tony. That doesn't count. So
it's not like they're Charlotte.
Caleb Downs scores a touchdown.
All right. I don't want you riding on the coattails of my interception for your pick 6, but also I don't want you scoring a Caleb Downs touchdown if I'm not at least getting 1 point on it. So, any kind of defensive touchdown, singling out a person is pretty much a go, unless you are talking about Malik Hooker, which again would maybe be 1 point, but it'd have to be from like a certain yardage way back in 2016. Okay. All right. Caleb Downs touchdown. Now, are we including punt returns on that?
I just said Caleb Downs touchdown. So that sounds like, and you agreed to it. So it sounds like it. Now, Tony, has it been literally 10 years since Ohio State has returned a punt for a touchdown? Yes. Am I particularly concerned about that being the one that hits? I will not lie to you. I am not. However, I'm willing to keep the door open just in case.
You know what? For me to say like, oh, it can't be punt returns, is like, really, like, it can't be comment strike. He can't be allowed, like the field can't tilt in and then he slides through into the end zone through the sheer force of gravity. Because if that happens, we're taking that off the table. So, okay. Caleb Downs touchdown.
And he can slide into the end zone. Just to be clear, he can slide into the end zone.
That's only if the field is tilted. He can't do it on his own. Okay. They're going to blow that dead.
Make sure you write all that in there. I don't want to have to go back and watch this show to get clarification on that.
If we forget, we forget. It's okay. My 1 point free bold prediction for you, Tom, as I think in my head, how about this? Each of Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins will have carries of at least 1 yard and at least 2 quarters.
So it doesn't have to be the same quarter. It doesn't have to be that Travion and Quinshon have a quarter. Okay. All right. That's good. You know what? It's funny. I was thinking about a Travion and a Quinshon parlay as well for you. Let's keep it even simpler. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins combined for at least 5 carries. So there's a way, Tony, that your freebie for me hits, and they each get 1 carry in 2 different quarters for at least a yard, but that's it. And that's the only time they run the ball. And so yours would hit, but mine wouldn't. And that would really be quite a boon to you. So just trying to leave the door open to get you any points we can here, because I know you've been struggling recently. So
appreciate that, Tom. And I appreciate all of you for dealing with this and putting up with it. Those of you who have. So if you haven't hit the thumbs up on this YouTube, we would appreciate that. And if you're listening to us via your podcast platform, a 5-star rating and review goes a long way. So thank you for that, if you would be so kind. And of course, continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up, become a member, say hello to us there. So there you have it. Bold predictions in the book. I don't want to talk about my feelings. It's not a good time for it. All right, that will do it. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.